This day extracts a heavy toll. The hardest choices require the strongest wills.
What's up, everyone? Back at it again. It is DW Darkwing Dad bringing you the part 2 tutorial of my Thanos helmet build. Some of you might have seen that sneak peek video that I did, the music video featuring I Prevail. You've seen a glimpse of how this helmet looks, which I can say it did come out awesome. But in this tutorial here, I'm going to reiterate everything I did to make that helmet look like this. Hopefully you guys seen part 1. Part 1 went through and covered a whole bunch of stuff: PLA welding, reforming and shaping, prep, sprayable body filler, all kinds of stuff. If you guys are curious as to how I got the helmet as smooth as I did and you hadn't seen that part 1, make sure to check out that part 1 video. The link will be in the description. So there are some other segments of this helmet. I made a masking video. Like I said, you guys might have seen the music video, but I am going to reiterate everything that I did on this helmet. Everything from just prep before painting, painting itself, masking, clear coat, weathering, and some other tips and tricks along the way that I did to get this helmet looking aesthetically sound as it came out. I'm not going to take up too much more of the time as I'm going to have a lot of commentary in this video. We're going to jump right into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you one last shot of the helmet before we started painting, and then get into the whole process beginning to end. So without any further ado, let's go. All right, so here's one last look at the helmet, nice and smooth and ready for paint. We are using a DuPont paint. It is called Antique Gold. Should be an awesome color for this helmet. So once I get my spray filter all set up here, I'm wiping it down with a tack cloth. What that's going to do is that's going to remove any debris or lint or anything that we just don't want getting into the paint, any trash basically. So I sprayed it around 20 psi, nice even coats. We don't want anything too heavy, we don't want any runs, just nice and uniform. After it was all sprayed, you can see here, really awesome color, looks great on the helmet. I'm gonna let this sit and cure for about 2 days before we get into masking. Speaking of masking, that's coming up next, so let's get into it. All right, so it's been a couple days. I sprayed the second coat of gold. For masking off, always very, very important. You want to use the right tape when you're masking off. Automotive tape is specifically for painting. I have some very fine precision automotive tape here. Again, very important. A lot of people just use blue painter's tape and think that's all the same. It's really not. That is meant for latex and interior enamel paints. If you put that on too soon, you're going to have a reaction because those solvents that are gassing with that glue in the tape, and you're going to see all kinds of warping, and the glue's going to melt in there, and you're just going to have a nightmare trying to clean it up and get it off. Furthermore, it will kind of etch the paint and leave an embossment, so to speak, in the paint. So what I'm going to do here, give you a little time lapse, get this all masked off. So I've got my razor blade, my tweezers, my snippers, a bunch of craft paper here. So I'm gonna get this thing all masked up and get it ready for paint. All right, so now we're ready to mask. So very, very important, I mentioned, on giving your mask enough time to cure. I waited 2 days. Depending on your atmosphere, you may want to wait longer. I'm starting off by using a precision automotive tape to get nice curves and bends and get in those nice detailed, intricate areas, and then following it up with some thicker automotive painter's tape. I do have a full video and tutorial on masking. Please check that out. That will explain things more in depth. But what I'm doing here, masking off the areas that need masking, using the craft paper to cover the big areas. Once the helmet was all set, it was ready for paint. This here, just a different angle showing you how I use that precision automotive tape to get those nice tight areas, those bends, those curves in certain areas. You can see I left the other back side of the helmet here. I did this specifically for my masking tutorial, but again, went through, used the detail tape to get nice, straight, crisp, intricate lines, and then filled over that with the larger automotive tape to fill in the gaps. The big, large areas that didn't need tape specifically, we used the craft paper, went through, got everything nice and crisp, nice and clean, and ready for paint. Due to the small amount of purple I needed painted on the helmet, I went ahead and just used a basic acrylic enamel paint by Krylon. Went ahead and just did nice even coats, layers on there, still using my spray shelter. Big tip here when you're using spray paints, always use a light and make sure that you don't have any dry spots or any overspray. This just guarantees that the paint looks nice and uniform. If you have overspray, it'll just look almost dry, and it'll just look like blotchy, and like it'll have little pores and just won't look even. It'll look very grainy. Always make sure to have some sort of light or good lighting in your area to make sure everything lays nice and even. After you've let your model dry for about 45 minutes or so, you can go ahead and remove all the masking tape, the craft paper, all the stuff that you're going to throw out basically, and inspect your model. You can see here that it's looking pretty good. There are a couple spots here and there that I couldn't quite get exact, so we'll have to touch those up with a nice detail paintbrush in the next slide here. After all that, of course, clean up after your work here. So get all that craft paper thrown out. Here, these are just some of the areas that I couldn't get quite exact. There were just some very tight areas. So what I do is take that same paint that I used and spray it just in a cap and take a very precision brush there and just go through and just kind of smooth everything out, contour the lines, even everything out, fill in those areas that you need, make it look nice and clean. After that was dried and everything, back into the spray booth here, again wiping it down with my tack cloth, making sure there's no dust or debris on there. I did also use a rattle can clear. The reason for this, I didn't want to use a 2K clear. I didn't need this helmet being obnoxiously glossy because we're going to grunge it up, but I did want some sort of protection on there. So just a Duplicolor 1K clear is what I used. After that, I wanted to do some inner workings on the helmet. So I took some Eva foam and just to cover where those welds were, where I had merged the helmet together on the inside, because I want the inside to look nice. So I put some Eva foam kind of on the cheeks, and then I went and just painted the rest of the inside of the helmet just with some extra airbrush paint that I had lying around. This really did a huge difference on the helmet though. Making it all black, it really just made it look a lot more complete versus just leaving it kind of unfinished and untreated on the inside. The Eva foam, I did kind of reinforce it with a little bit of hot glue just to make sure it glued on there really nice. But overall, the helmet came out great, adding that little extra touch on the inside, painting it black and adding that Eva foam. Now that that's all complete, let's grunge this guy up. All right, so now we are getting to the part of the helmet that I love but hate the most, and that is the weathering and the beating up of the helmet. It hurts me to have to go through and damage this helmet up, but I know that Thanos' helmet, you know, he's been in all kinds of wars, need a little bit of battle damage, so that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do right now. The way I do this, it's a combination of everything. First, what I like to start to do is kind of get some wear and tear on some of these pointier edges. So just some high grit sandpaper. And I'm just gonna kind of go over that edge, just wear it down a little bit. As far as adding scratches and damage to it, there's many, many different ways that you can do it. I like to use things like small screwdrivers. I'll even use these scrapers, things like razor blades, just to make very fine, exact scratches. One trick that's really cool that you can use, bigger bolts or screws, and you know, these have a nice symmetrical pattern, and what you can do is if you want to get a big scratch, you can go ahead and kind of drag that like across the top. I give you a nice little pattern, and then you can use the tip of it to do like maybe deeper scratches and gouges and things like that. More or less just kind of make this its own, and that's really the great thing. I've mentioned it before with all 3D printing is, you know, you can do your own rendition of it, and it's, you know, it's still awesome. It's gonna take a while. The plan is to scuff this up. I'm gonna do a wash, a little bit of black again to just replicate grime and just general wear and tear and grunge that this helmet goes through. First, I don't want to do this, but I have to scratch up this helmet. All right, so starting off here, what I'm doing is kind of weathering down and wearing all these edges here, taking some 1000 grit and 3000 grit sandpaper and just kind of wearing some of the paint off the edges. We just want to give it that worn and tattered look to a sense. Any high traffic areas where I think things would be rubbing against it, maybe armor, putting it on and taking it off that just gets worn off is basically what I'm trying to do here, just wear some of those edges down. What I actually did was take a razor blade here to make some very, very fine scratches, just, you know, randomly throughout the helmet. Again, make it your own, guys. Things don't have to be exact, and that's kind of what I do with all these, is just kind of use my imagination. Now I'm using that bolt that I had said here, and that bolt was really awesome. I'm literally just dinging this thing, just taking chunks out of the helmet, and it really made a huge difference at the end. Really made it look like, you know, things were exploding and chunks of rocks or debris or something just hit the helmet and damaged it a little bit. So it's a really cool thing. Just be a little bit careful. Make sure you're supporting it with your hand. You don't want to knock it off the table and give it an unwanted battle damage or cracking it or something like that. So I went through and just nicked the heck out of it. Used screwdrivers and all kinds of different things that I'd mentioned to kind of weather it down and beat it up. Next, what I'm doing here is doing a light hand polish just in some of the nooks and crannies. We want the scratches to look defined but not too defined, so I go through and do a very light polish, and then what I actually do is grab my machine, my 3-inch polisher, and polish it down a little bit more, because we still want a little bit of shine to the helmet, just not a crazy amount. So I went through and used a nice polish by Gion, polished it with a medium foam pad just to kind of bring back that shine just a little bit more. Now that I have the desired amount of damage to the helmet, what I'm doing is taking a fine precision paintbrush and highlighting some of these deep scratches so they stand out a little bit more. Remember, we used a gray undertone primer, so the scratches don't really stand out a ton, but when we add this black paint, it really gives them a decent amount of definition and make them stand out a little bit more. We're actually going to go through the entire helmet and do this with what's called a wash. What that is taking a little bit of acrylic paint and diluting it with some water to make it a little bit thinner. So what I'm doing is going over the whole helmet, in any place where there's a scratch, it is going to make it just stand out more and highlight it. You can see how kind of runny and almost watery in a sense this paint is. The beauty of what we did here is by scratching it, we've exposed the primer. So by putting this diluted paint on here, it's going to grab to that primer and make all those scratches black. You can already see on the side of the helmet how they're starting to stand out even more. So this is a really cool effect that you can add to your helmet. I highly recommend using a primer as a base coat for this, as it's going to allow that top black wash to grab better, significantly better than using a gloss black or a gloss silver, something like that. How much better does it make it look? Well, you can see right here. Absolutely awesome. The black wash really does highlight those scratches. It makes the damage just look significantly better. You can see here, even those nicks, those chunks that I took out of the helmet with that bolt, they get all highlighted and filled by that black. So those scratches look very defined. It makes it just look even more real. You can see here on the non-wash side, you can't really see the scratches as much, and then you flip it over, boom, all those scratches stand right out. So it's really an awesome effect. So doing that black wash, I highly recommend doing that if you want those scratches to really come to life. All that was left at that point was doing the other side of the helmet with that black wash. Again, I repeated the entire process, did some touch-ups, took a precision brush, worked in some of those cracks and those crevices just to add a little bit more grunge to the helmet. Some areas I put a little bit too much on, so what I'm doing here is taking a Q-tip and adding a little bit of polish, and what I'm doing is I'm working in all the cracks and crevices where maybe I put the paint on a little bit too heavy. And what this does is it basically just strips the paint off and it blends it a little bit. It's kind of work in the crevices if you overdid the grunge in any of the nooks and crannies, and what it does is it just completely takes it off. Even when you grab a towel and start rubbing it off, it can either reduce down and take some of that paint off. You can see right there, it's helping take some of that paint off, but this is just a nice way to kind of blend in and maybe reduce it down if you got a little bit too overzealous with the grunging and the weathering. Once we had all the touch-ups done, everything was nice and leveled down. It was finally time to wrap this thing up. So with that said and done, let's take a look at the final shots. All right, guys, well, there you have it. That is the build there. I know there was a lot of information. Trust me when I say there was a whole lot of footage that I had to condense down. Try to give as much information in that commentary as possible, all while keeping the video at a relatively viewable time span here. I've come a long way from those 60-minute videos.
You talk too much.
Very, very in-depth build. I touched on some very important things in the video. Overall, I think it came out really great. You know, all those tips and tricks that I gave you, you can pretty much apply these to really any helmet, especially with the masking. I do have a full video on masking 3D prints 101 that really explains more about the adhesives and paint curing, things like that. So if you do have questions or are looking for visuals and a furthermore explanation on masking your 3D prints when painting, please go ahead and check that video. The link will be in the description. A lot of information. Hopefully you guys liked it and found it helpful. If you did, of course, please go ahead and drop me a thumbs up on the video. And if you have any questions on anything, whether it's something big or something small, or you just want to say what's up, make sure to drop me a comment. I always like seeing your guys' feedback, and I always like helping you guys if you do have any questions on anything that I covered. If you guys enjoy the channel and like what you've seen in this video, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. So whether you're a fan of Marvel, 3D printing, cosplay, DIY, or just anything in general that you're seeing me put out here, make sure to click that subscribe button and come back to see what else I have in store for you in 2023. I do want to thank each and every one of my subscribers and viewers for watching this video. You guys are what makes this channel tick, and I appreciate all your guys' feedback, and I thank you guys for taking your time out of the day and watch the video. I do have more videos on the way. Right now I am currently working on a Jason Voorhees mask. I am also working on Kang the Conqueror that I'm hoping I can get done before Quantumanium drops.
Hey, I believe you.
But I just have so many projects going on, working more with the shop, trying to spend as much time with the family as I can. So I try to squeeze these little video segments in these tutorials in when I can. But know that the videos are coming, and DW's got a lot more in store for you just around the corner. I will also have my subscriber giveaway. I am giving away not 1, but 2 Iron Man helmets, so be on the look for that video. That is dropping soon as well. That's pretty much it for now, guys. If you have any more in-depth questions, you can always hit me up on social media. You can also drop me an email. I can hit you back there. As I said, I got some projects I got to get caught up on, guys, so I'm going to get going to those right now. Drop me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and until next time, DW out. Later.
But the work is done. It always will be.